Will from the Heavy Hole Podcast, joined by my loyal co-host, Tom.
Yep.
And tonight our special guest is none other than Kyle Beam, guitarist of Rochester's Undeath. How are you, Kyle?
Oh, I'm chilling. How are you, sir?
I'm chilling hard, too, man. That's awesome. Appreciate your time, and shout out to your bandmates, man. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Hell yeah. Thank you very, very much for having me, both of you.
Awesome, man. Yeah, and we, I said behind the scenes when we were booking you, it's been a while because we talked about Undeath a few times in the early days of the podcast, and it took a while to get you on, so we're glad we're here. And before we get to the most recent album and some of the live performances you guys have been doing lately that we know about and all that, let's go back. You yourself, Kyle, you know where I'm going. Are you from a particularly musical family, or is there anyone that steered you towards rock or metal or anything of that nature?
Oh, no one musical really. No players. But I mean, my mother, because I live with my mother. My father and my mother are divorced, so I grew up with my mother visiting my father, and she would listen to lots of the local new metal station, like the upstate New York station for that stuff is called K-Rock. I'm sure you guys have heard of it.
Oh yeah, we have K-Rock down here. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You know K-Rock.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So I was a definite K-Rock child. My mother was always playing that stuff in the car, and my dad, not really like a metal guy now, or even for the last mad long. I don't know. He was really into Judas Priest. I think he said he caught them on the British Steel tour, and he saw Sabbath on their first album tour and shit like that. He was into Maiden, but I don't think he was really into any obscure kind of stuff. He didn't really keep up with it, but yeah.
Okay, and is guitar your first instrument?
No, actually, my very first instrument was French horn. I was a French horn player. All through middle school and high school, early elementary school or whatever, late elementary school. Yeah, I don't know. I think that they did that day at school where you get to go check out the instruments, and the French horn. I don't know if you know what it looks like, but it's got a lot of wraps. It wraps around a lot.
Yeah,
it would be very long if you unraveled it. I thought that was pretty cool about it.
Huh. Yeah, it sounds pretty cool in over black metal arrangements in some bands I've heard.
Hell yeah.
That's interesting. All right, so and before we get any further with music, are you originally from Rochester, New York?
I'm not. No, I actually grew up about 3 hours southeast of here, in a very small town called Munnsville, New York. I actually live outside of the town as well, out in the hills. To put it into perspective how small it is, I know from a public high school, my graduating class was 38 kids. So the music thing was pretty crazy out there because there was none of it.
Okay, and that speaks to we've covered this before on the podcast. We had Eric Burke of Sulaco and various other projects on the podcast once before. We had Cam Schwartz of the Growl death metal documentary, who's from Canada, and we talked a lot about upstate New York and how that's different from where we're from down here, Long Island and New York City region. So just quickly to catch the listeners up who aren't from the area, Rochester, you're actually about a good 6 or 7 hour car drive from New York City, fairly closer I would say to the Canadian border than to New York City. Yeah. All right, and now you're describing more of a sparsely populated rural environment, right? That you grew up in.
Oh yeah, definitely a 12-minute car ride to my nearest friend's house all through high school.
Interesting. Okay, so it's fair to say then, another typical Heavy Hole question, that touring metal bands or record stores that sold metal, or any coming into contact with those kind of subcultures in person outside of the internet, that probably was infrequent where you grew up.
Oh yeah, dude. I got into underground music and stuff pretty early in my life, but I was never able to really go out and do that kind of thing until my good buddy Travis turned 16, and he was able to take his mom's car up to Syracuse, New York. That's where we go. hit up like oh god, I can't remember the record store out there for some reason off the top of my head, but we'd hit that shit and go to the Lost Horizon and see shows and stuff like that. Some other DIY venues.
Okay, and what type of music was like prevalent in the? Was there like I guess you'd say Syracuse was probably the local scene that you were like gravitating towards. What type of music were you seeing at your first more independent type of shows? Was it hardcore? Was it metal? Like what was available?
So going to my first shows was like I was probably 15, and by that time in my life, the metal had kind of taken a step back, and yeah, I was really into like Syracuse. I'm sure everyone knows is pretty known for like its hardcore scene, and there's still tons of hardcore bands in the Syracuse area and shit. And so yeah, like those kind of DIY shows I was going to. My first show I ever went to. I actually, you know what? The first shows I ever went to really were like with my mom. She'd bring me like to fucking metal shows and shit when I was like 13. But by myself, I believe Travis and I saw Converge at the Lost Horizon. I think that was our first show. It was pretty dope.
Huh. Converge. Okay. And what metal shows did your mom bring you to?
Well, she brought Travis and I both to oh my god, the Summer Slaughter tour that had Necrophagus on it.
Huh.
I can't remember what year that was.
2008, 2009. They were on 2 Summer Slaughters, I think. The first 2.
Okay. Yeah. I believe this one. It was the one that had like oh my god, I don't know. I probably had like Born of Osiris on it and shit like that. I mean, I'm sure that the other Summer Slaughters that did too had that band too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that guy Ash from Sumerian booked those, so a lot of those.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
Huh. That's interesting to see Necrofed. Now, do you remember that making any kind of impression on you at a young age?
Hell yeah. I loved that band. Definitely getting to see them was like extremely dope. I honestly I can't remember the venue either. It sucked though. The sound was like awful. It was very, very loud. That I do remember, and it was my first mosh pit. I think I ever saw too.
Okay, man. All right. So, at what point do you go from the French horn to the guitar?
Ooh, in between is a bass guitar.
Okay.
So I mean, Travis will probably come up in a lot of stories because I mean, he was my one friend I had that was kind of into music. You know what I mean? Like in Stockbridge Valley Central High School, there were not very many people into underground music at all. So, but he was a guitar player, and I picked up the bass guitar because I wanted to play with him. And I honestly don't think we've ever played a note of music together, but I played bass guitar for a couple of years, and I tried to like get better at that. And eventually, I don't even remember how I got it. Someone gave me an acoustic guitar, and probably around like 15 or 16 or something, and I would just kind of learn how to do like cowboy chords and stuff like that. I didn't really start playing guitar, electric guitar, until I was like 19. A little after I started college, and before electric guitar, I was a double bassist. I actually studied double bass in school for a little bit.
Huh. All right. Ever perform live with that or with any of the other instruments before guitar?
Yeah. Orchestras. Just like that kind of like classical music ensembles on double bass. But bass guitar, not really. Oh, you know what? I was in a couple like DIY like punk bands in college when I moved to Syracuse, and I did play bass in a couple of those.
Okay, well that was going to be my other question. Is I didn't see anything when I was looking up for bands that you were in prior to Undeath that would have been writing original music and playing live.
Yeah, basically right when I got done with high school, I moved to Syracuse to do like school, and just I feel like every year I would just like meet new people, and we'd start some new shit. Nothing metal. Honestly, it's tricky to find people who like metal. Like for me in my life, it always has been. Huh. But I did. Some of them were heavier. I was in like a band my last year of school where it's like this weird combo of like sung melodic vocals, but also like kind of fast, thrashy, like right hand guitar parts. It was a weird thing, but yeah, no, just that kind of stuff.
Okay, so then take me into the forming of Undeath, and you talk about going to school in Syracuse. How do you end up being in a band that's known as being from Rochester?
Well, I dropped out of school and was living at a show house at the time. Maybe correlation there, allegedly. Uh,
Mm.
but I moved up to Rochester with my good friend Dylan because he had a place up here and I had nowhere to go. I didn't want to move back to Munsville. You know, like that place. I mean, I've grown to appreciate Munsville in my. I mean, I'm not very old, but you know, I'm older than I was when I was 18. So I've grown to appreciate it, but I definitely did not want to move back there when I dropped out of school. So that's how I wound up moving to Rochester, and I lived here for about a year, I would say, before Undeath picked up. So I was just working at Tim Hortons, which was so miserable, terrible job. And I worked there for a while, and then I would just come home and I would practice, and I would practice before I went to work. And I was just like trying to get better at guitar. And then one day, my roommate Dylan, he showed me an Instagram video of this dude who, like, I sort of knew of him. I'd seen him at shows and stuff, but I had never said hi. And he's a pretty quiet guy too, so I didn't know him. But his name was Matt, and that's our drummer. So yeah, Dylan showed me this video of Matt playing double kick drum, and I was like, holy smokes, dude. You know, I've played with like a lot of drummers, and I've never played with one that can do double kick. So we met up to have some beers and jam, and he was just into, like, you know, underground death metal and all the same kind of bands that I am and shit. So it just kind of worked out really well.
Okay, and that's Matt Browning, right?
That is Matt Browning, yes, sir.
Okay, longtime drummer of Undeath. And before we get, you mentioned something I want to go back to. You said that you were living at a show house when you were in college in Syracuse before you dropped out. Tell us a little bit about that, because I personally love house shows, that DIY culture. There's been a few show houses here on Long Island through the years that I had an affinity for and my bands have performed at. How did you get involved in that in the first place? How do you end up moving into the show house when you were in college?
Well, I am not going to claim any credit. All of it was like my boys, Evan and Eric. Our house, their house. I mean, my house too. I guess I lived there. It was called Space Camp. And honestly, I don't know. I mean, those guys were booking some shows around the campus anyway, and there was only really like one fucking spot to do it. There were two. There was this building called Badlands. There was a building with two spaces in it, and one was called Badlands and one was called Spark Arts. And a lot of the university like DIY shows would happen at Spark Arts, and then the Syracuse like local hardcore shows would happen at Badlands, and they were always at odds because the university kids were always like fucking smoking weed and drinking and shit, and the owners never liked it. So anyway, though, Spark Arts, it's a little shot. So I think my boys just wanted to have a spot where they could do their own thing, and they moved in, and they needed a roommate, so I moved in, and both of them were. Eric and Evan were both drummers in one of some of my old bands, so like we already knew each other and played music and shit. But and those guys did all the booking at the house. I just used the weekends as a really good excuse to party and get extremely hammered.
What any bands of note that came through there?
You know what? I thought about this recently, and there are, especially if you're into like the underground like indie rock kind of touring circuit, which I admittedly don't really know that much about, but there was this band called Crumb, who at the time were not a very big band. They had a 3-song EP out, and I remember it's called Lock It, and I remember it because it's fucking awesome.
Huh.
And they're like a group, I believe they're 4 Berkeley graduates. I mean, they're just like mega shredders, and they play like really crazy like jazz fusion, indie rock. I mean, it's like relatively technical. It's pretty dope music. And I mean, holy shit, that band is like huge now. So I don't know that one.
Crumb. Okay. And any nights that come to mind that things got a little out of hand, or maybe it got, I don't know if it got shut down even or something like that. Cops coming. I don't know.
Oh yeah, cops come. I mean, not all the time, but yeah, a couple times cops come. But all they do is just, I mean, okay, kids, we're back again. It's time to play acoustic tonight. One of your neighbors bitched or whatever. Geez, dude, we would get rowdy there. I do not remember, but I do have video footage of my friend and I we'd play this game called 50% Body Shots, where you start at 50% power and you can only punch in the body. And gee willikers, that one escalated. There's some stairs and I don't know, not a real fight or anything, but
50% fight. Yeah.
50% fight.
It adds up.
Man, what I missed by going to community college.
Jeez, yeah. Well, your wallet's not missing it.
But I dropped out too, so don't worry. I dropped out for death metal too, man. Kids, don't try it.
Let's go.
Yeah. So, all right. So, you end up going up to Rochester there, following the death metal dream. You hook up with Matt Browning on drums. Alex Joseph is also very early on in the band, right? On vocals.
Yep. So, not months after, maybe even just like a month, Matt and I had a couple songs worked out, and we were ready to start recording for a demo. And yeah, we needed a singer, and I knew Alex because he is staying in a lot of Rochester bands. Oh, a couple. I mean, like 4 or 5, I'm pretty sure. So, and I just knew that. I mean, I didn't know if he could do like death metal singing, right? It was just like an audition, but also I knew that he was like a good front man, and I've seen him perform and shit. So I know he can like count. I know he's not like terrible. So yeah, decided to hit up Mr. Alex on Facebook, and thankfully he was just like, "Sure, bro, of course, I would love to try to do that." And the rest is history, as they say.
Sweet. All right. So the rest is history. Demo 2019, your first demo is cut. Tell us a little bit about that too, just the recording process, and also the artwork is very interesting. I always enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah. So, well, the artwork, all of our album releases, or like you know what I'm trying to say. All of our releases, the artwork is done by Matt Browning, the drummer.
Okay.
And how that came about, like we needed a logo. You know, we had been jamming, we had some songs and shit. This, I think it might have been before we had hit up Alex, but Matt was just like, "Hey, well, I got it." And I was like, "All right, sure, I'll let you. We can try that." So then he just like sent me. It's not the current logo we have, but it was pretty similar. And yeah, I was just like, "Holy smokes, dude! I didn't know you could draw." But yeah, it turns out that he went to school for doodling or something like that. Maybe it was education. Maybe it was art education. I can't quite remember, but something to do with art.
Did he also drop out for that?
No. I do believe that Mr. Matthew has I'm the only person in Undeath, I believe, who doesn't have a degree.
Oh, well, every member of Heavy Hole has dropped out of college, so it's not.
We're
not
I'm
judging.
in great company. We're feeling good here, guys.
Yeah, and
exactly.
I'm usually the least successful member of any of my bands. Pick a band.
Oh yeah, me too, bro.
Even bands I got kicked out of. but we'll leave it at that. All right, but back to your band. And we got a shout out to. It was released. Talking about your demo 19. Still, it was really. I'm just looking now on Metallica. It was released. Severed Records put it out on CD. Shout out to Barrett. And Caligari Records put it out on cassette. I'm sure both of those are probably sold out by now.
Hell yeah. So when we recorded, not to cut off the idea, you're just going with. I'm gonna get back to when we hooked up with those two fine men. We recorded it. We used to play in this practice space. It's right across the street from the Genesee Brewery. And it's called the St. Paul Practice Space. And my God, there's like 55 steps that go up to it. No elevator. They're like sheer. I mean, it's crazy. So that shit sucked. And we'd have to carry our cabs and shit up there all the time, whatever, blah, blah, blah. but it was also freezing, and we recorded that demo in like January, I think, maybe. I think it came. You said it came out in February. I think we recorded it in January. So, God, how did we even do it? I think that I taped microphones to the drums.
I love it.
I might have just like tried to throw like a loop through the ceiling for like an overhead. And if I remember correctly, I believe the overheads on both of the demos are fucked up. They were out of phase, so only one overhead is being heard on both demos. I do not know how to record things, just so everyone knows. But so yeah, and then so we did that, and there was like no click track. Matt didn't have headphones or anything. He was just listening to my amp. I was trying not to get bleed into the drum mics.
Beautiful.
And then afterwards, I just overdubbed my guitars over that, and we had Alex come in and do his thing. And another little tidbit for the vocals, I do believe we used a Dirty Disgusting Sock as a pop filter.
Nice. I love it, man. That's great, dude. That's like classic death metal recording tips. How to get those cryptic sounds.
Yeah. Just don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, we've talked before, and it was even brought up. I think I read a lot of those metal books the last year, but just the idea that some of those classic metal albums everyone loves nowadays from the early '90s were recorded by producers that had never even heard death metal.
Yeah, dude, totally.
And some of these Scandinavian countries and elsewhere. So, what brewery did you say you were by?
The Genesee Brewery, my friend.
Yes, sir. Because I was gonna bring it up. I have a little bit of experience with Rochester. And that was one of the kind of iconic Rochester landmarks I was going to bring up was the Genesee Beer Brewery, and we do have a listener question submitted regarding that. Quickly, Zachary Mahoney wants to ask you: Genesee Ice, Jenny Cream, or Jenny OG?
Oh, shouts out, Mr. Zach. Long time no hear from you. Red Eyes all the way, OG baby. Let's go. Jenny Ice. Trash. Stop making it.
Oh.
Well, I don't know. I'm not going that hard, but typically, if I don't really like ice beers, I think they taste kind of bad. But that's fine.
Well, typically, ice beers, in my experience, are kind of like a. How do I say this?
They're cheap and they'll get you extremely drunk.
Yeah, it's kind of like for when malt liquor isn't available, you defer to the Bud Ice or, God forbid, the natural ice.
At this point in time, dude, every gas station has like hazy little things, Sierra Nevadas or something. I feel like maybe the ice beer market is beginning to die. Who knows? Maybe not, though. I don't drink.
Well, the seltzers are in.
That is true, dude.
So
That's true. You could pick up a single thing of White Claw, too.
Huh.
Yeah.
The more we talk about this, the more I might have to revert back to drinking natural ice just to be
old school,
death metal and underground, because everyone's doing the other thing, so Will's got to do the not thing. I gotta be sick and drink the. All right, we'll get off of that. All right, so
suffer.
But shout to Genesee. That Genesee Cream, it was. I don't like a lot of flavor in my beer. That's a little too much flavor for me personally, but I'm not going to go in on it like you did with the Genesee Ice. But
I agree with you. I mean, I think cream is lesser than Red Eyes, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, cream is good a little bit in my coffee, not in my beer. But we'll get off of that because we got a lot to talk about with Undeath. I mean, you release now. If I can pronounce this right, man, it's not going to be as bad as when I interviewed Eston Brown. Big shout to Eston with his bands, but Sentient. Or autolysis.
Yeah, honestly, I've heard it pronounced so many different ways. When you click on it on Google, it says autolysis.
Or sentient autolysis.
Yeah, but so that one that came out the same year. Oh, yeah,
sorry, I cut you off to say the thing that you just said. It came out the same year, 2019, very quickly. So go ahead, please.
So the last one we recorded, wrapped up, and then released it. And we got hooked up with Mr. Caligari. Well, I mean, actually, we just emailed him. We were just like, hey, dude, like, you want to do some cassettes for this? And he was like, definitely. Shouts out. I love that guy. He's really, really dope.
We haven't been in touch, but is that label ran by a guy named Mr. Caligari?
No,
because that would be awesome. All right, just stop right there because we're gonna pretend it is. That's awesome.
All right. Well, Mr. Caligari, I don't know his last name, and I'm only iffy on his first name. So
yeah.
actually, you know what? I don't know if his name is secret or not. I don't want to say it, but I definitely do know his name. Actually,
It's Caligari, bro.
it's
All
Mr.
right.
Caligari. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
shout. There's a big. There was an old horror movie I think called Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
So
believe that he uses imagery
yeah,
That's what the label's based on. If you look at
Yeah.
the Bandcamp
that
and
on his
stuff.
website.
Yeah. So yeah, just for the listeners, man. But I still think it would be awesome if the guy called himself Mr. Caligari. But that should be one of our Italian callers from the Bronx. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead about Mr. Caligari and your Sentient Autolysis demo, or is it or EP rather?
Well, yeah. I guess. I think that we maybe intended it to be a second demo, but it didn't say demo, so everyone thought it was an EP, and the production's a little better too. So we just went with it. It's fine. Geez. Well, we were a brand new band, so we weren't really playing any shows. You know what I mean? We didn't really have like the live thing to worry about. It was just the three of us. We didn't have second guitar. We didn't have bass. So playing live, well, we did do it a couple times back then, wasn't necessarily the main prerogative. So we were just like really focused on writing. And I do believe that I had quit Tim Hortons right after Demo 19 came out as well, and I don't think I had a job for a couple months, so I was just like really focused on doing that. That's how we got that one out so quick. And we did that one. We recorded it the exact same way. Ricky Ticky, freaking microphones hanging everywhere, barely working. Overdubbed it the same way. Although for that one, I could actually afford to buy myself an overdrive pedal by that point, so the tone was a little better.
You talk about not playing live much around the time you record Sentient Autolysis. Now, as you're progressing forward as a band, before we get into the fact that the next year, 2020, you actually would put out a live album, Live from Hell, and video. When you're progressing forward, putting out those two demos in 2019. Writing initially for the band, obviously it's a death metal band, it's an underground death metal band. The way you recorded it with the microphones that you just described, you're not concerned with being a clicky, state-of-the-art deathcore, quantized type of band. You're going for a more old-school approach. What's going through your head? What are the influences? I'm obviously a little bit older. I'm trying to rap with the kids here. I'm trying to get inside your head and find out, for a young man making death metal nowadays, coming of age in the scene that Undeath is associated with, what are the influences and what are the bands that really stand out to you that inspire you?
Well, I mean, definitely you got the obvious ones like Morbid Angels, Cannibal Corpses, Autopsy, shit like that. I mean, that's pretty much just like the sonic blueprint for what the genre can be going forward. You'd have to think, right, or something like that. It's like, okay, well, these bands have double kick drum and they have distorted guitar and they have harsh vocals. Like, I'm not going to change that. Like, that seems to be like the foundational aspect of the type of music. So those are obviously influences. And I mean, we've definitely gotten better at drawing from influences a little bit and drawing from more different outside influences. Like, I will say, for Demo 19, I was just really inspired by a lot of the new death metal bands. I was like, shit, we're just making a death metal demo. Like, I wasn't trying to do anything crazy or whatever. It was just for fun with my boys. So we were just kind of inspired by like the new crop of bands and everything. And then on Sentient Autolysis, like we could play a little faster and a little better and shit. And I believe the track Grave Osmosis kind of opens with like Covenant era kind of like double bass backbeat, like okay. So we were just like trying to attempt things like that, and also at that time it was like, we were brand new. It was like, okay, well, let's have a part like this. And it's like, okay, we can definitely have a part like that because we've never had a part like that before. You're not like gonna redo yourself or something. So yeah, back then, I mean, it's that stuff, and I mean. Definitely, I feel like we try to keep, at least back then, we were trying to keep as well, like an idea of where metal music has been in the last 20 years, since like 2000, but definitely try to probably keep it more inspired by like the earlier stuff, because I mean, that stuff is real good.
Of course, and that's now listening. I want to build up to your full length album, Lesions of a Different Kind from 2020. But briefly, I do want to, because we're talking about your writing style. And you mentioned, right off the bat, you mentioned Cannibal Corpse in there with the other bands. I listened to Lesions today, and really tried to pay attention to it in a new way and hear it in a new light because we were doing the interview. And something that jumped out to me is Cannibal Corpse. Especially older, more classic Cannibal Corpse, there's a stiff groove that Cannibal Corpse is kind of known for. Not really so much more like the Long Island hardcore hip-hop associated groove, but very metal, stiff, almost like thrash-influenced groove that Cannibal Corpse is known for. So I would definitely ask you, being that Cannibal Corpse is associated with Buffalo, which isn't regionally too far away from where you guys are, but a distinctly different city, obviously, but not too far away. Would you claim them as a big influence, particularly recently and with newer material? Because there's something I hear there. And also, I would just have to add to that, Deranged from Sweden. Are you familiar with them at all? And you might know what I mean when I get to that.
I'm sorry. I just lost you on the Deranged from Sweden part. What was that, buddy?
I was just asking, we can get to, I was just asking if you were also familiar with them and you might claim them as an influence, because they're another very traditionally Cannibal Corpse sounding band that has kind of made that into their own thing.
Interesting. I got to be honest with you. I've never heard of that band before. I'm going to check them out, though, right after this.
I just heard some parallels maybe while I was listening to certain Undeath tracks. That's the only reason I bring it up. And I think it's because both bands take some of that classic Cannibal Corpse, very stiff, rigid, popping death metal sound, maybe to a modern edge. So what about Cannibal Corpse? Am I off base there?
No, absolutely not. Cannibal Corpse, when I was like a young kid, 10 or 11, I was playing a lot of World of Warcraft, and some people in my guild got me into Cannibal Corpse. They've always been like one of my favorite bands. Dude, they're fucking awesome. And yeah, they're from upstate New York, which, there's a couple other like great extreme metal band, like not extreme metal bands, but like heavier band like Earth Crisis and like that kind of thing from like upstate New York, but there's not too much to claim up here. So having Cannibal Corpse be from so close is extremely dope. And yeah. And I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yes, Cannibal Corpse definitely a huge inspiration on the writing too, because Alex Webster, dude, what a fantastic death metal songwriter. Just I think he's pretty inventive. I think that Cannibal Corpse is a great band. They're not like riff. They have like real structure to their songs, but they're also typically not just a really standard like pop song structure. They're like their own unique kind of death metal song structure styling. So I think there's definitely a lot to be learned from Alex Webster, not only as a musician but as a songwriter too.
I would agree, man. And those old Cannibal Corpse albums are something that it's almost like there's certain death metal albums, especially nowadays, where we see the internet and there's memes and everything. And I'm not knocking any of that, but it's like, you look at like the first few Morbid Angel albums, the older Cannibal Corpse albums, maybe even Death, and sometimes it almost turns into like a meme, but it's like you forget to actually sit down and listen to those albums and get something out of them every once in a while. Bolt Thrower, like it almost becomes
absolutely. Oh yeah, and let me assure all the listeners, there is a lot to be gleaned from all of those records too.
Yeah, it's not just a cool T-shirt or a cool image to put on your social media wall or something like that, man. So. But without getting too much on the old man rocking chair, I'll just divert back. No, because there was just something I heard there that reminded me a little bit about that classic Cannibal Corpse pop that they have, and just not to be too much of a weirdo on a limb here with the Deranged from Sweden thing, but I've always loved Deranged, one of my favorite bands. They've put out a multitude of albums and have never really swayed very far from this kind of singular, very American style, even though they're a Swedish band of death metal. That also, I think, inherits a lot of that Cannibal Corpse writing style that you were just talking about. So without spending too much time on that, though, I do want to get further into Lesions, but let's talk about 2020. You put out Live from Hell, the album and the video.
Yep. So that came about because we were supposed to go play a film festival on a haunted barge,
What?
Chattanooga,
What?
Tennessee Film Festival.
Okay.
Yeah, I was so excited for that. It was going to be so fun. It was like this little one-off thing, no stress. Like they're going to pay for our shit to get down there and whatever. So it was going to be dope. And then, yeah, like obviously COVID happened and
Oh yeah,
it
yeah.
got closed down. No problems, but yeah, everyone's got the same story. But lo and behold, they had the fest digitally online, and we just did that little video for it, the Live from Hell thing, and we said, frig it, like we may as well release it, right? I mean, we recorded and shit, so put it on VHS. We shot it on VHS. I will say that that was a pain to edit it together. Shot it on VHS, released it on a little limited VHS run, and then I believe there could even still be some tapes of it. There are tapes too, yeah.
Okay, and yeah, man, a lot of people got their plans knocked out last year with COVID. We will get to what you guys have done getting back to the live circuit, but you guys were able to record and release Lesions of a Different Kind, your full-length album in 2020 at least. Could you tell us just a little bit about that? I mean, we already talked a little bit about the writing and I guess my take on it, like what I got out of it, but maybe just how playing live, at least for a little bit before COVID hit, might have influenced the writing style or what you wanted going into it. And I also see that you recorded it in Philadelphia, didn't you?
Yep. We have recorded now twice at the Headroom in Philadelphia. Great place, great, fantastic sounding room for drums, and very, very affordable. They have great gear, so plug for them. And we recorded Lesions prior to Live from Hell. Actually, now I think about it, I think we recorded in October, I want to say, of 2019. We recorded Lesions, and yeah.
Wow, so you recorded the two demos and the album in one year?
Believe so,
I
yes.
love it, man. It feels like Undeath's been around for a little bit longer than it actually has for me personally, as a listener, because there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right, so in writing the album, I mean, there's not a big stretch of time there. What do you attribute? And also, well, let's get into this a little bit because you stretch it out over the year. Spring, summer, you say October was around the time you recorded the album. But what I want to get into is Rochester, New York. You guys are up there, very close to Canada. You experience harsher and longer winters than we do down here on Long Island. I think that's pretty safe to say. Does that factor into maybe not playing live as frequently, maybe shows not happening as frequently, bands writing and staying in to write and rehearse more often, like we hear about in some of the Scandinavian countries? Would you say maybe that's a factor?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a factor for why we don't really play out that much in the winter and shit. I mean, driving in the snow sucks. Driving a van with a trailer in the snow is twice as bad. So
Yeah.
yeah, and definitely, I mean, I'm an indoor guy. Yeah, but during the winter, I'm super indoor guy. So yeah, I do a lot of writing in the winter for sure.
Okay, and Lesions of a Different Kind, the album itself. Let's talk about that. What's going into that album? You've cut the two demos. What are you trying to? I know you said you're just trying to write a death metal album. You have a very humble approach. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. But it's did you record it prior to signing with Prosthetic Records for it, or did Prosthetic work with you after it had been recorded?
Uh, well, we believe I had like a majority of the material written by the time they reached out, but we did record it under them. Because I actually think the move, I think we were gonna do another EP or something. I don't think we wanted to do a record until we could get some support for it, because I didn't want to record a whole fucking record in our practice space and blah 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 shit like that. And talking about the record, I mean, going into it, we kind of wanted to go. I mean, we were getting there on the Sentient tape, but trying to get a little bit more like songy songs, kind of going like choruses where the title of the song is in them and shit like that. Just because, well, I was thinking about it, I'm like, what are my favorite records like? I'm like, oh well, they have fucking banging songs with like great hooks. And also, what makes a great record great to me is that like not all the songs are the same. You know, like fucking Metallica records have ballads and shit on them. I mean, I would love to try to compose a death metal ballad. I don't really know what it would be like. It'd have to be about like loving death, but also, so that was just kind of those are the things that we wanted to kind of focus on. And now that it's been out a while, I think that we hit the mark on some of the things. Like I think that like on the track Legions and shit like that, we really hit the songy song kind of mark. But other tracks, they probably could have used a little bit more work, blah blah blah, shit like that. But
Okay, well, everybody goes back and looks critically at themselves, but you mentioned that what happened with COVID. Unfortunately that sounded a haunted barge. That's crazy, but you did come back and you guys did okay. You played you were support on a national tour with Rivers of Nile, Carnifex, After the Burial, and Black Dahlia Murder this past fall.
yes, that is true.
Yeah, let's talk about it, man. I mean, that must have been a pretty crazy moment just whenever you got the email or the text or whatever, and you realized that was coming to fruition.
Dude, hell yeah. Well, I mean, it was really weird because it's like they reach out like months in advance for that kind of thing, and I mean, it was I want to say maybe like June even they reached out like months prior, and I just didn't know if it was gonna happen. For a long time, it's like.
Yeah.
I mean, how crazy can it be if you don't know if it's going to happen or not? But yeah, once it got to like the month before and it was all on and confirmed and shit, it was I was very nervous. Never been away from my own bed that long before. I'm sure most people haven't. 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
And it was my first tour of that magnitude. I've been out on like weekenders and maybe even like 4 or 5 days before, but nothing quite like that one. It was a privilege to be on the tour for sure. Not even just doing media speak. I mean, everyone was like extremely dope. All the people on the tour were really, really grateful to be back. Doing what they do, and because I mean, everyone on that tour, those guys have been on the road. Even Rivers of Nile, who is the newest band on that tour, like they've been touring since 2011 or 12. You know what I mean? So everyone was just really excited to be back. Doing what they got to do, and the vibes are really good. That had to have been one of the first metal tours back after COVID too. So I was like, all I'd hear is from fans like, this is my first like outing even or like show, blah blah blah. In like fucking 2 years, it's like so dope, blah blah blah. So it was just a really, 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 really good time.
Awesome, man. And yeah, you mentioned being on a tour like that. Now, those guys, you're right. It's 4 bands who really don't play around with the touring. Those guys, prior to COVID, were out constantly, and now they're getting right back into it. Very professional style bands. Just take us. I've asked other younger artists this after a big tour. What did you learn from it? What were you surprised by? Maybe just in terms of the showing up early, the loading in, the more professional aspects of it, of the merch and things like that, cutting merch money with the club, and just there's a lot to it that you don't necessarily get exposed to playing underground shows. I was playing underground shows for a good 15 years or so before I ever played shows where I realized that level of professional responsibility.
Oh yeah, dude. Me too. I played a lot of shows, and none of them have been like that. Shit I learned? Well, I'm going to say the very first thing that comes to my mind is when you go on tour, bring a suitcase that is not malleable. If your suitcase is a big bag, everyone's going to fucking hate you like they hated me. The other thing is like, yeah, dude, the load-ins on that tour were really early. They were at noon every day. So that was definitely a shocker. Like most days we did not show up at noon. Obviously, that would be brutal. But so definitely you get used to the ramming the roads. You're definitely there. You play, you hang out, pack up, and you leave. Go to the next one. Shit. I will say that I learned that you can downshift vehicles. I was banned from driving early on tour. If anyone knows, they've been this way. There's a very big mountain in between Denver, going from Denver into Salt Lake City. And I just kind of took the mountain way too fast. And you're supposed to like pulse your brakes. And I was doing that, but then the van started shaking. We had to pull over. It was pretty scary. So that's what I learned.
Wow. Yeah, I've had some pretty bad the scariest van with a trailer on a hill experience was actually in Pittsburgh for me.
I believe it.
The hills of Pittsburgh. Yeah, but I believe you too about up the Colorado thing. Yeah, man, a lot there. So and just for so you're expected to load and you're expected to be there at noon. And just for the listeners who might not realize, this is a harsh reality that some artists learn the first time they go out on a tour like this, is that you'll perform. And you might be, and also when you perform on a big package tour like that, sometimes it is frowned upon or bad manners in a way to leave immediately after your set if you're one of the younger opening artists, because you're going to be expected to hang around till the end of the night and make yourselves available to help out. Because even though it's a big professional tour, there's not necessarily tons of roadies and things like that. You know, you want to ingratiate yourself to these bigger bands who are giving you an opportunity and their management and all that. So a lot of times at the end of the night, and also there'll be sharing of equipment, sharing of drums and amplifiers that goes on. So you want to make yourselves available to help with all these huge boxes of merchandise and breaking down. So really, you're performing, hanging around till the very end of the show, till everyone's left, and you and all the bands are there with the lights on at this club at 1 or 2, 3 in the morning, whatever it has to be, loading up their big trailer and making sure all your stuff is done. And then you have it on you to now at like 3 in the morning or whatever, be in the next city of the tour at 12 noon the next day. So if you can find a few hours to sleep, if you have to stop somewhere, it's on you, but you now have less than 12 hours to make it to the next city, which could be 6, 7, 8 hours away sometimes.
Easily. And those are some of the lighter drives, I'd say. So yeah, and that's all totally true. And another reason to stick around until the end too is that a lot of people buy merch right at the end. I mean, people will buy records and bullshit, like right at the end.
Yeah.
They don't want to crush them in the pit or whatever. So, but yeah, dude. I mean, no, we never dipped out early. Yeah, and you know what? Another crazy thing too on those kind of tours is the merch cut thing. I mean, it's complete asinine horse shit, but it's something I guess you deal with.
Total grift.
I've experienced it. I haven't experienced it that frequently, and I haven't been back out touring much since things have opened up from COVID. But prior to COVID, when I would go on some of the bigger tours I was lucky enough to go on, we didn't experience that merch cut so much. I'm wondering now if with clubs opening up after the pandemic, they're taking a bigger merch cut from bands to try to compensate for the loss of the pandemic and closing down.
Oh yeah, I definitely considered that. I think that could easily be part of it, definitely. And also, a lot of the venues we played at were Live Nation venues, and I know that they always fucking take, I don't even know what the hell it was, 20, 25, 30% or something.
Jesus.
I mean, 30% of a t-shirt sale. I mean, that's it's like over half your profit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say who, but very helpful tip. You know how they count your shirts on the way in?
Oh, yeah. Our merch guy was allegedly very good at pretending that we didn't sell much.
Allegedly, he was allegedly bad at math.
Well,
yeah. They'd be like, "Hey, Grotto, how much did you sell?" He's like, "I'm supposed to keep track of that."
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, you could do that, but you can always allegedly bring some in with a drum bag or two.
Oh, dude, that's such a good idea. I didn't even consider that.
Yeah, do the count and then let them do their stupid bureaucratic thing, and then on the way out, you're good.
Yeah, that's way more legit too. It's not so scary.
Yeah, I won't say what professional touring musician told me that one, but
allegedly
it helps.
This is all banter, allegedly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's weird because I can understand the clubs are stretched right now since everything, but Yeah, man, like underground death metal bands selling T-shirts for $10-15 or whatever. It's
Yeah,
crazy, and that's another thing is when you go out sometimes as a supporting act, you set up your T-shirts in these big clubs. That's why bands like the Black Dahlia Murder, After the Burial, all these bands that you were on tour with and bands of that caliber have to charge so much for their merchandise sometimes. You think, wow, these guys are really cashing out, but just more people are taking a cut when you get to that level, unfortunately.
Hell yeah, dude. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you'd think with like a sold out show and $14 beers that you make enough money.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, the $14 beers. Jeez.
Yeah, you always want to ask for a cut of the bar. It's like,
Yeah,
fuck,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
It's basically
well,
free
here's
money. Like, we all know
Hey.
how much, they're getting beer for. It's almost nothing.
Why don't you go get me a W-9 for this sale?
Yeah. It's very frustrating, man. Makes you want to just play those DIY venues a lot. But yeah, big ups to Black Dahlia Murder and all those guys getting back out there, man, playing the game. It's not easy for anybody now.
Oh, hell yeah. And absolutely no shade either. We had a great fucking time. It was truly a dope experience.
Yeah, we're talking more about just the inherent vices of the game with the clubs coming back from COVID right now, man, and those, and also just trying to explain in a way. I mean, really, with Black Dahlia Murder, and I'm just singling them out because that's the tour you're on. But Cattle Decapitation, Obituary, all these bands that are on a very big level, really just explaining why you might have to pay more when you see those bands. It's really not the band members being Scrooge McDuck and being greedy. It's like I said, there's just a lot more people getting a cut. It's more expensive just to operate the type of venues those bands perform at, professional sound engineers, professional security, and so on and so forth. So it's really also just trying to explain that those bands aren't necessarily cashing out as big as everyone might be accusing them
A lot of overhead.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah, there's a lot of overhead.
Yeah, man. Those guys work hard, and that's all I'm saying. So, and now moving ahead, you also, I don't know, you did a small regional tour, I guess, coming off of that Black Dahlia murder thing. That's where we saw you guys in Rochester. I had the fortunate experience. Stabbed was playing in Rochester, and we jumped on with Exsanguinated, my new project, and we got to perform with you guys in Rochester. That was a small regional tour, I guess, coming home from Black Dahlia Murder, or was that separate?
Yep, it was separated by a little under a month, just like a couple weeks, and I think we just wanted to fit in one more last thing at the end of the year before we close up shop for the winter. So and yo, that show was awesome. That show was extremely dope. You guys were very, very sick, and also I couldn't believe how well attended that was for a Bug Jar show. It was awesome.
A lot of fun. I was just happy to be there and to be part of it, man. And yeah, the Bug Jar, great venue. I was fortunate enough to be there when Artificial Brain opened for Cognitive many years ago. Shout out to Oz, the guy who books metal shows there very frequently there, and Bobby who works there, man. Really enjoyed that venue. I'm glad that they're back open after all the bullshit last year that we were just talking about, man. That's a really cool venue up there in Rochester. And one more, I had brought up the Genesee Brewery. And I had brought up the Bug Jar just now. I wanted to talk about, while we're on the Rochester talk right now and the Rochester venue talk, let's talk about, is it Mark's Texas Hots?
Oh yeah, Mark's Texas Hots, one of the very, very few late night places in Rochester.
Yeah, Mark's Texas Hots. Wow. Me and the guys from Stabbed and Bowel Erosion, big shout. We were all up there, Long Island guys, away from home, looking for a place to eat late at night. And the diner was closed that somebody Googled, and then we found Mark's Texas Hots. Are you familiar with that place? Have you been there?
Oh, I'm very, very familiar with Mark's. Honestly, I have never had a garbage plate from there. I'm a Rochester person, so I've had a lot of fucking garbage plates, let me tell you. But I've unfortunately never had one from Mark's. Whenever I want to go in, dude, it's like Saturday night at 3 a.m. I'm hammered. It's like packed out the friggin' place to the sidewalk.
Oh, it was live. It was crazy, man.
It always is.
The guys at the front door were holding it down. It seemed like there were like these two old guys that garnered a lot of respect amongst the local crowd. People weren't really starting too much trouble with them, but it felt very live wire, man. Shout out to that place.
Yeah,
I did get a garbage plate.
Oh, yeah, you get well. All right, you get mac salad.
Yes, I got it. Well, I got it. Yeah, I got it with like the works, with whatever the nice older lady who took my order said. I said, when in Rome, to her. She said, do you want this? Do you want that? I said, sure. When in Rome, right? I did not eat the whole thing. It was disgusting.
Yeah, it's an absurd amount of food. It's so awesome.
And it's also like not. It's an absurd amount of food, but you can't save it. You can't eat that the next day in the microwave.
No, you don't. You don't.
That's
want to. No.
That's a dark path to go down.
The only way that you can have a leftover garbage plate is if you leave it out overnight and just eat it.
Oh God, yeah, in a parking lot when you wake up on the concrete. Oh God.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mark Valentino of Stabbed and Exsanguinated. He's a vegetarian gentleman. He walked in there and he got himself like some fried mushrooms and some I don't know, zucchini or something. Man, I was like, this guy he made the right decision. He was
That's
set.
crazy. I would not mark that place up to have vegan options.
The lady literally said, quote, and you can quote me, "I'm sorry, we ran out of the fried cauliflower." So they got you open.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, so Mark's Texas Hots, man. Don't judge a book by its cover. Also, you might want to go there earlier in the day, maybe not at 2 a.m. on a weekend. I don't know.
Which
I gotta recommend everyone take a trip 2 blocks down the road, go to Dogtown during the day. They got a better place. I think.
Okay, man. All right.
quick question. You're implying that you should drink earlier in the day, right? Perhaps start drinking at
you want to be
11
drunk when you go there regardless.
Right.
But the late night crowd, the late night crowd's a little wild. You don't want to take grandma there late.
Start drinking at 9:30 in the morning and find yourself there before 7.
Yeah, I feel that's probably a crowd there too. that's probably that's all right.
There definitely is, bro.
Enough about Marks though. One more Rochester play. While we're enough about low key shading garbage plates, which I do not want to do. I'm a big fan of Upstate's culinary regional hits. But one more place. Are you familiar? Have you had a chance to familiarize yourself with House of Guitars?
Oh hell yeah, buddy! The old hog.
Love that place, man. I really do. Every time I go to Rochester, I didn't get to check it out because we were only there quickly the past weekend for that show. But I love to. I could get lost in that place, man.
Oh yeah, dude, the record store part. You been into that?
Yeah. It's like a huge open warehouse, and it looks like there's probably stuff that's been sitting there since the 80s and 90s and stuff. It's great. It makes you feel like you're almost in a time machine with record stores.
Dude, it's crazy. There's a bunch of signatures down there from people, like famous people who come and play Rochester. I think Trey's signature is down there. There's a signed and framed picture with one of the owners in King Diamond.
Awesome.
There's a bunch of crazy stuff. A bunch of Cannibal Corpse fucking signatures on the wall.
Of course. Yeah, I know that's a very historic place. I just want to touch on that. I know, is it true Cody of Sanguisugabog played bass for you on that tour?
He played bass on a tour right before COVID.
Okay.
He did 2 shows with us, and then my van broke down. And then Matthew and I were stranded in Akron, Ohio for about 3 days. And then COVID hit. So,
well, wait. Tell us a little bit about that. That sounds a little. That doesn't sound fun, but it sounds like a good story.
Well, shit, dude. I think what happened was one of my emergency brake pads kind of came down, and so Matt and I were cruising down the highway, fucking 85, and all of a sudden it's like underneath the van is like, we're like, holy fuck, we're dead. And we had no idea what the problem was. Had to get AAA to tow it up to Akron because we're in the middle of nowhere. And I'm sure Matt, this is the good story. You know what? Fuck the rest of the 3 days. That just sucked. This is a good story. We break down and Matt just instantly goes, I got a shit, dude.
Oh no.
And I was like, bro, there's nothing here. It's just cornfields. It's like the middle of the day, like we're on a highway. He's like, dude, I can't hold it. And he's just like laying there in my passenger seat, gripping his stomach. He's like, oh. And then eventually he just he made me get out of the driver's seat. He pulled the van at an angle, opened one of the doors to block the front, and then he shit on the side of the road like a little animal.
Wow.
And buried it.
At least he buried it.
Yeah, at least he buried it. Yeah.
Well, I think it was wise to not go into the cornfields and shit because
I think so. I think you're right.
You do not want to mess with a farmer. They got a
no.
tool for every occasion, man, including a 12
Yeah, like
gauge.
a gun.
Yeah, dude. Wow. Okay, so well, I'm glad you guys made it back. That's crazy. And we've had you on for a little while now. We talked about your album, your most recent tour. I do want to plug, just for the listeners who might be in the Detroit area. If I got this right, correct me if I'm wrong. Saturday, January 1st, first day of the year, New Year's Day of 2020. Oh wait, was that last year, the Detroit show?
Nope. It is this year with Never Ending Game.
With Never Ending Game and 3 Knee Deep, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was looking at the flyer. Yeah, New Year's Day coming up, not past. No time machine needed. Coming up 2022 at the Sanctuary in Detroit. Cool little venue. I remember that place. How do you guys end up playing Detroit on New Year's Day? Is that part of a little tour, or is that actually just fairly close for Rochester?
No, neither really. I think we just got asked, and I think that we will be unable to play during the spring. So I think that we just wanted to hit one fest. Should be like a fun show. I think it'll definitely be pretty good one. People be moshing and jumping off the stage and bullshit. So,
from what I see on social media, it seems like there's New Year's Day shows, probably because it's a Saturday this year, going on everywhere. Everyone's just hyped to have a show come out, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on. So that's great, man. And
yeah.
I also just want to quickly shout out. We mentioned Cody of Sanguisugabog jumping on bass, and we did have an interview with Cody where he talked about that a while back. But you've since found a bass player in Tommy Wall, also of Hallucination Realized, Tomb Warden, and other projects, right?
Yes, sir.
Now he's I spoke to him briefly at the show. He's actually from like the DC area, right?
Yes. So we met him back when we were 3-piece still. Tomb Warden played a show with us up here at a venue called the Rose and Crown, and we met him there. And I also believe we played a show with them in DC at Atlas Brewworks that Mr. Hassan booked.
Hassan, shout out to Hassan and Atlas, man. Well, all these great places coming up.
Shouts out. Yeah, and I almost want to say Alex might have been the one who really did the dirty and got him in and everything, but yeah, dude. I mean, that dude is an insane bass player. Back when I was a kid and I was just starting to play bass guitar, I think that if I saw some of his playthrough videos, I'd be like, damn, this dude's my favorite bass player.
Awesome, man. And you also relatively recently incorporated Jared Welch on guitar.
That is also true. And I've actually known Jared for probably 4 years now, maybe even longer. But yeah, he went to college in Rochester, and I actually knew him before that because I went to college with one of his high school friends, and we played music together. And so I was introduced to him that way. And actually, almost, I want to say even before Alex was added, Matt and I did jam with Jared on some of the Demo 19 stuff, but he was too busy with school, so couldn't make it work then. But yeah, so we did add him last summer, and that dude's also just he's a great guitar player. He's been a guitar player since he was a young kid, and he's played a lot of different kinds of guitar.
Okay, and well, that would now getting into having acknowledged them and your most recent album. You guys, historically, we know from 2019 and 2020, you work quick. And winter is approaching here very fast, as we said in the beginning of the interview. Are you guys writing for a new album? And I would just ask, are Tommy and Jared contributing to the writing? And just before I skip over the question, Sean Newhart, Undeath listener and podcast listener, asked, when's the new album dropping? So just, are you writing it? Are those guys contributing? And when should we expect it, if you can say anything to that?
Well, as it would have, I don't actually know if that's a saying people say, but...
You said it.
Yeah, I said it. It's done. It's all done. It's been done for... And that's it's mastered, mixed mastered, artwork, layouts, everyth's done.
You guys work too quick. What the fuck, man?
Hell
That's
yeah.
crazy. All right. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, we recorded it in March of 2021. Because actually we were going to record a little earlier, but due to some COVID stuff, we couldn't, and had to get in there a month later. But both of those dudes contributed to some of the writing on the record. When can we expect it? Soon, real soon.
Huh. Can you talk
Yeah,
label?
maybe. I'm not sure when this episode will come out, but like, depending on when it does, it may either already be out or very soon.
Wow. All right. Well, we're probably going to get this one out this week. So.
All right. Well, then in that case, it's going to stay soon.
that would be crazy if you dropped it like tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I was going to ask if you could tell us anything about this album, but I'm going to defer to listener Adam Moore, who asks, over the last few years, a surge of excellent new death metal bands have formed, including Undeath, obviously, and made significant progress in a short amount of time. As death metal continues to gain in popularity, do you worry that the current volume of relatively new bands and material is making it more difficult for a band like Undeath to stand out? If so, how do you plan on combating this?
Yeah, I mean, that's something you guys talk about on the show often, really, is like how saturated the market is with metal music. I mean, and that's not even just at like bands releasing their very first demo on Bandcamp today. Like, we're talking even like big label rosters, I think are like, there's a shitload of bands. But most things, I don't know. Well, first of all, I'll say, and I'll be the first person to say, we're very lucky. So, shouts out to everyone who's ever listened to our band. Thank you. Also, like, you know what? I think that the things that stand out the most always have great art. I think that having just like great art, like visual art for your record, is really, really, really important. I mean, it's something that, if you're putting a lot of time into your music, you probably want it to like look good and shit like that. And but I don't see it really as a negative either. Like, that there's so much music and so much like death metal. I mean, people could be making like fucking dog shit like Midwestern emo or something. So so it's cool. I mean, whatever. Chug a chug, boys. Let's go drink some beers.
Yeah. You just you get to a point where you can't let it bother you, and you just got to take metal for what it does for you personally, and don't worry about the sea of music out there. And also, you're not just competing with all the modern bands and all the big labels. You're competing with the past, because the reissue game is crazy right now. They're not only reissuing classic albums, but they're digging up demos and albums by bands that were very obscure. And getting a new light. I mean, it's like everyone's competing with the past too, in a way.
Dude, that's true. Also, like, speaking of like competing with the past and like metal music and stuff like that, it's really fucking crazy to me how relatively short of a time metal music has been around in comparison to like, which I mean, it makes sense. Technology's gotten better and faster, and as technology increases, I guess like the speed at which we transmit ideas and shit increases too. But like, I mean, I don't know. In comparison to like classical music, it's just like, it's crazy how much metal music there is, and how it's really. I mean, how long has death metal been around? 30 years, like 33, 4 years. I mean, come on, that's not very long, really.
Yeah, I always think in terms of hip hop, punk rock, and metal overall, but obviously I think of death metal kind of coming up, bubbling up from the 70s, and how crazy they've kind of all taken over the world in their own forms, in their own ways, and influenced culture very heavily. It's a really interesting time to live in as someone who takes in music and art and wants to be creative.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, talking about that's really interesting about the new album, man. You kind of like, I thought you were joking at first, man, but that's really good, man. That's cool. You guys do work fast, and interestingly enough, you said you recorded it in March, which would be coming out of the winter, like we talked about before, upstate there. So I just want to encourage everybody, if we have a harsh winter this winter, man, keep it locked indoors with your guitars or your lyric books or whatever you do. And finally, before we wind it down, Kyle, one last listener question. Big shout to Tom Anderer, one of my best friends since 8th grade, pretty much, and member of Reeking Aura, Buckshot Facelift, Gray Skies Fallen. He asks, do you love wrestling? If so, what era promotion, /promotion? And then he has another question we'll get into after you answer that one.
Dude, Tom, I'm honestly, I'm real sorry to disappoint you. I really don't know shit about wrestling. I know, like, when I was a kid, my dad was kind of into, I think it was WWE back then with like Stone Cold and Gravedigger. No, Gravedigger's a monster truck guy. The
Undertaker. Right. Ooh, we might have to edit that one out. Ooh.
No, we're leaving it in because he's speaking my language.
It's a good thing Justin would not.
I'm sorry, guys. I know. He'd fucking roast me. I'm glad he's not here.
Justin might have just like taken the headphones off and stomped out or something. But all right, okay, yeah. Well, fair enough though. Now, Tom Anderer's second question: do you believe in ghosts?
Oh, dude, that's so crazy. When's the last time you guys talked about ghosts? Was it the Crypticus interview? It might have been.
Might have been.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Me personally, no. Maybe if I'm like in the dark, allegedly a little too baked, I'm a little scared. Maybe then. But no, I don't. Well, I don't know. I mean, we could get real crazy. We could be like, obviously, your energy has to dissipate somewhere when you die. But I don't know, dude. No, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no.
Perhaps you'd have a different answer if you got to play that barge.
You might be right. And
we'll never know.
Geez, there's a venue too that we played at that had a haunted swimming pool. I did not get to see it though, unfortunately.
A haunted swimming pool. That can't be good.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's I don't want to think about that. That's interesting. Wow. Oh boy. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I got a couple of stories, but none of them go anywhere fun to cap off this interview about ghosts. But so anyway, we'll move on. Shout out to Tom Anderer. Thanks for the questions, and thank you to you, Kyle, for your time, which you've been very generous with, and we are going to respect right now. We'll give you the opportunity to give shout outs and promote anything we failed to, but we're going to ask you right now the traditional question: could you recommend anything? Could you recommend a new album and an old album? It could be anything you want, any genre, just something old and something new for the listeners and for us.
Yes, I definitely can. You know what? I even made a little notepad document here before the interview, just so I could do this quick.
All right.
Awesome.
All right. Old one first, I'm going to go with. Throwing it back here, 62 years. I think that maybe there will be some listeners that know this one. I'm going to go with, I recommend it, Shostakovich's, Dmitri Shostakovich, String Quartet number 8 in C minor. I think that it's, dude, it's a fucking metal-ass piece. I got to be honest with you. I mean, it's like, it's definitely one where you go on YouTube and like the comments are like, this sounds like technical death metal. That sounds like Spot Possession. So it's dope. That's a dope piece. It's great. And specifically, if anyone is looking for the really intense movement on that one, it's the whatever the fast one is. I can't remember. I think it's the third, maybe. It's an Allegro. Anyway, though.
Can you text me that one in the chat when you get a chance?
Yeah, no problem. I got you.
Awesome.
And then for my new release, came out very recently this year. It is Midnight Betrothed. Gosh, if you are into dungeon synth at all, or if you're into raw ass black metal, then I think that you'd get a good enjoy out of that one, a good listen. I mean, there's tracks on it that literally sort of sound like there's like Vanessa Carlton keyboard lines with like kind of vocals. It's fucking dope, dude. It's great. Cannot speak. I don't know anything about the guy. I'm wears corpse paint, and he's generally weird. So maybe he's weird. I don't know. I don't speak to his beliefs or anything, but that record is dope though.
Huh. All right. Well, yeah, you got to give that little disclaimer nowadays. With the,
I know.
with the
If you wear corpse paint, you gotta give it
the face paint guys, you never know where they're coming from. It's
I
weird,
know.
and sometimes you got to have a decoder or something to know. I don't know what that means. All right, fair enough. Vanessa Carlton, though, that's interesting. All right, so Kyle, we thank you very much for your time. Is there anything that we failed to promote or speak about that you wanted to bring up?
No, dude, not at all, really. Actually, I will say this is the first interview I've ever done, I think, where World of Warcraft didn't come up. And I also wanted to say thank you guys for your time. And sorry for talking your ears off for so long.
I'm sorry for blowing up your spot, but you did mention World of Warcraft when we talked about Cannibal Corpse.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's how it always comes up.
I'm sorry.
You're right. No,
gotta keep it real.
right.
But there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want you to break your streak on the heavy hole. Let's,
Oh, I'm freaking out now.
All right, Kyle Beam. Final parting words for fans of Undeath from Rochester and listeners of our Heavy Hole podcast.
Oh, well, first of all, to the fans of Undeath, I want to just say thank you all very, very much. Always reach out to us on social medias, blah, blah, blah. We always respond. I'm always super happy to hear from people. Yeah, you guys rock. Thank you. And to the listeners of Heavy Hole, you guys are also dope and awesome and rock because you keep these guys wanting to do the show, and I love listening to the show. So thank you very much.
Okay, well, I love the listeners, but I keep wanting to do the show just to hear the sound of my own megalomaniacal voice. But thank you, Kyle, for your time, brother. We appreciate you, and we're going to be on the lookout for that new album. It might be out in a couple of minutes from now. Who knows, man?
Came out 30 minutes ago.
Yeah. Have a good one, man.
Hey, you guys take it easy.